Smitty is not happy. He says the draft is in 3 weeks, and it is in 3 weeks from today. But this is the subject. Smitty, don't you worry. Look what we got coming up now. What a perfect segue. Smitty, you buckle up, all right? We're about to give you some draft content right now from Field Yates, who, of course, is...
And sorry, Smitty, but Lamar is always a topic. That's not ever going to end. Never.
You know how it goes. The latest mock draft. Field, friend of the show. We had him on, what was it, in Vegas, our first Super Bowl that we worked together. And I guess the theme here, could the Ravens be finding a pair of starters, Sarah, 3 weeks from, not necessarily tonight, but 3 weeks from this weekend on the opening days of the 25 draft?
Yeah, so Field Yates has two guys that, if they did fall to the Ravens, could be starters, maybe not week 1, but certainly work their way up. So let's see here. Let's go to his first pick at number 27. Okay, he has picked edge rusher James Pierce. And before we read his stuff, he went on the Mina Kimes show, and they kind of went through his picks all together. So let's listen to him and his thought process of picking James Pierce Jr. with Mina Kimes.
Baltimore Ravens are next. Not a lot of glaring needs, but one of those needs is guard. I'm going to put Tyler Booker back on the board. And then for the first time, I'm going to introduce the Tennessee edge, very divisive prospect, James Pierce Jr.
James Pierce Jr. is my pick here. The Booker makes a lot of sense because we were talking about how he's like a zone versus a power scheme. Ravens not afraid to run the football right at you with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and all that stuff. I'm going with James Pierce here. And Mina, he is a tricky one. At his best, and we're talking about a 248-pounder who ran a 4.47 40. Like, are you kidding me? He can really bend the edge. Some of the advanced metrics, I'm not sure if that's the proper terminology, but some of the, I'll call them advanced metrics, like James Pierce, like he had a high edge pressure percentage last year. I believe it was second to only Abdul Carter. He had 7.5 sacks last year. He had 9.5 the year prior. This is not the kind of guy who I think is like going to go like, teeth to teeth with a guard who's pulling and want to like really meet him there and make life miserable for that guard. But the Ravens play with a ton of leads. And what do you need to do when you have a lot of leads? You're protecting against the pass. James Pierce can get home, and they really need another rusher here. Kyle Van Noy has been this incredible late career revelation he's actually just always been really good, Kyle Van Noy. But Odafe Owe is their best and kind of only young rusher in the stable that as of right now, you're saying to yourself, like, this guy is a huge part of our future. So give me James Pierce.
All right. So let's see if we can get this up. Okay. So I do agree in terms of the need. I think the need is there. And the need is there long-term also. Like he brought up KVN, and Odafe Owe is on his final year. He's going to play on his the 5th-year option of his contract. And so neither of those two guys are promised next year. And there's not like an obvious pass rusher up-and-comer. And you don't want to find yourself without one. So right now a rookie can be mentored by KVN, Kyle Van Noy, and obviously Odafe Owe and some of the other guys in there. So James Pierce, Bobby, is tall and lean. So he's not like, the thickest, most physical guy. He wins with a little bit more speed and his moves. I don't know that he's going to be bull rushing. Field Yates kind of said it right there. He's not going to be like going, head to head with the guard and then just out muscle him. And so, and I also don't know that he's a 3-down linebacker, which you kind of want a guy with your first round pick to be on the field all the time. But there is a lot of upside there. There is a lot of upside there. And, somebody that you can put into the system and try to get him going before some of these veterans move on. What are your thoughts on James Pierce?
Well, I think you're going to get a kick when I tell you who Lance Zierlein, who's the NFL draft analyst for NFL.com, has comped Who do you think his comp is?
Odafe Owe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's Odafe's comp.
Yeah.
Now, what did Field just say? Field just mentioned Odafe. That wasn't his actual comp in terms of comparison, was it?
I don't know.
He just mentioned Odafe's, like he just referenced that he's coming off a 10.5 sack season. But anyway.
Yeah.
So Lance's player comp is Odafe. And the weaknesses that he has attached in his write-up. Needs more mass and play strength for transition into the pros.
Yeah.
Lacks swipe strength to displace blockers' hands once they're in. Pass rush can be knocked off track by a firm punch. Tight hips make it easier to guide him past the pocket. Struggles to break down quickly in space, allowing sacks to slip away. So there are some clear knocks here, but if you're getting compared to Odafe, you know the athleticism is through the roof, and maybe it'll take a little bit of time to develop. He's 6'5", like Field mentioned, 245. Here are more of the traits that showed up at the combine. Field mentioned it, a 4.47 in the 40-yard dash. 10-yard split, 1.56 seconds. Vertical jump of 31 inches and a broad jump, 10 feet, 3 inches. I mean, the guy's a ridiculous freak of an athlete. It's just a matter of, will that translate over? It's taken Odafe a little bit.
Right.
This was a more productive player. Let's be clear. This is a more productive player coming out of Tennessee.
That's what I was going to say. Like that's the thing. That's exactly what I was going to say, because he has that comp to Odafe Owe, and so everybody assumes that it's going to take 4 years for him to like, come about. But that is the massive difference. Like Odafe Owe had 0 sacks, 0 in his last year with Penn State. Here we are with Pierce. He had 7.5 last year. He had 9.5 in 2023, and then obviously when he first came into the college ranks, he only had 2, but he had 2, and then it goes up to 9.5. And I was reading a write-up from Daniel Jeremiah, and he's like, this is why he's gonna fall, is because his last year wasn't as strong as 2023, but he's like, that's good for the Ravens, because otherwise he could be gone long before. So Bobby, here are some edge rusher rankings from a few different places. So on the right, that's Mel Kiper. On the left, it's one of those websites that just focuses on the draft, and it's called NFL Draft Files. So NFL Draft Files has James Pierce number 1 among all their guys. PFF, I looked up, I believe James Pierce is number 3. For Mel Kiper, James Pierce is number 6. For Daniel Jeremiah, James Pierce is number 6. But here's what's interesting, and this is why you can't get too lost in here, because I was looking at Daniel Jeremiah's overall top 50 players. Okay, so you don't just want to see, because so on Mel Kiper's, there's James Pierce is number 6, and let's say David Walker's number 7. Okay, but how big of a gap is there? Are there like 50 other players at different positions that you would rank in between them, right? Or how close are they? So Daniel Jeremiah, when I looked up his top 50 rankings, he had Abdul Carter number 1, which almost everybody has, right, as the top edge rusher. And then he's got Jalen Walker, which some people don't have him in this outside linebacker group. Mel Kiper doesn't. But he's got them number 1 and number 5 overall among all players, those 2 top pass rushers. Here's what's crazy. He's got Mike Green, Michael Williams, Donovan, whose last name I'm not going to pronounce, from Boston College, James Pierce, and Shamar Stewart, all ranked in his top 50 from 21 to 27. So what that tells me is all of these edge rushers outside of Abdul Carter and Jalen Walker, if you put them with outside linebackers, outside of those 2, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are like all right there, all basically in the same tier. And so then it becomes who's the best at projecting and who's gonna develop the fastest. And so that's why you'll see James Pierce high up on some people's charts and low down, because they're kind of, at least in Daniel Jeremiah's view, they're all kind of right there in the same tier. And it's like, what's your flavor that you kind of move them up and down?
Sure. All right. That now brings us to the second of these two players that we're talking about, right? That would potentially be somebody that the Ravens could build around, somebody that Kyle Van Noy could mentor, and they bring into what is a room that needs not necessarily depth, but needs some players to challenge the young guys that are already in that room. So, again, one of the 11 that they'll have 3 weeks from tonight, which will actually be 3 weeks from tomorrow because rounds 2 and 3 obviously are on Friday, is a 59th overall. That's the second round pick for the Ravens. Their lone one in that round. And Field Yates went with a safety out of Notre Dame, Xavier Watts. His write-up is as follows. Watts is a ball magnet on the back end as he led the FBS with 13 picks over the past 2 seasons. If Baltimore wants to take the next step, it has to shore up the pass defense. Putting Watts alongside Kyle Hamilton is a good step in that direction. And in fairness, anybody who's next to Kyle, Sarah, is going to probably benefit from it. But here are the measurables on Xavier Watts. He's 6 feet, 204 pounds. Combine numbers are not listed, which means I don't believe he would have participated in the combine if it's not up on the board right here. And productive player. Played a lot of college football.
Here's what's crazy, Bobby. So obviously I went to go look up. I was like, Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame is safety. I was like, he and Kyle Hamilton should know each other pretty well. So they did play 2 years together, but when Kyle Hamilton was there, Watts was not playing safety. He played, did I write it down? He's been at a couple different positions at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I got it right here. So
okay, yeah, pull that up.
So anyway, one of the reasons why he played so much college football was they gave him a red shirt the pandemic season.
Yeah.
Played in just 2 games. So redshirted him. That allowed him to really get a fresh start for 2021. So basically there were a bunch of injuries during the 2021 season to the Notre Dame linebacker group. So Watts switched from receiver to defense. Saw snaps at the rover position, which is a mix between safety and linebacker. Made his first defensive contribution against Virginia Tech. And then how about this? Also saw time at strong safety when Kyle went down with a knee injury. So that was they were kind of tinkering with him in 2021 before he moved to, full-time safety later on in his career.
So this is really good for transit. Okay, so he played wide receiver. And then when he went over to defense, he played that hybrid linebacker safety. So that sounds like a strong safety where you can do a little bit of both, just like Kyle Hamilton. So he led the FBS with 13 interceptions over the past 2 years. When he's transitioning over from offense.
He's to give you an idea of how much college football he's played, he'll turn 24 in November during his rookie season.
Okay.
A lot of these guys that the Ravens have brought in recent years, like Nate Wiggins, pretty sure he played his rookie season at 21.
Yeah, he was young. Lamar was young, right? They like to do that. Here's the thing with that, at the safety position, I'm not as concerned. Usually you want them younger because then you can get them on their second contract in their prime years, right? So you've got a good 8 to 10 years where if you hit on a first or second rounder, you've got them for, 8 to 10 years. In this case, where you already have Kyle Hamilton, who's going to be playing here forever, that you're not going to pay 2 safeties. So no matter who the Ravens get at safety, it's kind of like when Ed Reed was a safety and there was just a revolving door next to him, or when Ray Lewis was at linebacker and then you'd go find the Bart Scotts of the world who was like an undrafted linebacker because you could put him next to Ray Lewis. And so because you have Kyle Hamilton, you're not going to pay another safety. So in this sense, fine, get the more mature safety who can be a plug and play. He knows Kyle Hamilton, obviously. You're not going to sign him for a second contract with Kyle there. And so put in the guy that can get 13 interceptions back there in 2 years. It's crazy. Yep. So Yes, 2 potential starters, right? 2 potential starters, probably not by week 1. But you have that in those 2, and then you have, here's some rankings of safeties. Bucky Brooks has Xavier Watt number 3, and then the We Are Drafting, another one of these websites, has him at number 2.